Hello and welcome back to Tracing the Cross. My name is Micah, and in this video, we're talking about our experience on our Baltimore pilgrimage from about a month ago. We are in the podcast studio reflecting on our thoughts from seeing statues of Mary, seeing a lot of icons and relics and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that kind of content, remember to like and subscribe. But anyway, here's the video. I hope you enjoy.
All right. So it has been a week since we got back to California from Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
We are in the Tracing the Cross studios. So we have kind of been sitting with some of these thoughts for a bit of time now. So I think we should just get right into dissecting what we really experienced on this pilgrimage.
Yeah.
First thing that we really started to experience was the Cathedral of Mary, our Queen. I mean,
Stunning
stunning.
has been the key word. throughout the
Stunning
video.
has been the key word. And I mean, truly, this was one of the most beautiful churches I have ever
The
been
stained glass and the way that it projected light onto the walls
Mhm.
was out of this world. I
Well,
mean,
in. And the big thing from that is like the amount of detail in that church. It's
Totally.
not just one sanctuary and there's stained glass on the walls. It's like there are passages that you could go behind. You can go behind the altar and there's another chapel behind that. There are
they had
chapels
archway
to the
stones
sides. Yeah.
that sat over top of these archways, and the archway stones had engravings on them.
Mhm.
And I think I even got a shot of that, and it's really beautiful
Yeah.
the way that they laid those in.
Now, from that, I think a word that I kept saying for sure was overwhelming. It was a space that truly felt like I didn't even know what to do with myself. And I think that's a lot of the purpose. A lot of the purpose of Catholic architecture is to bring heaven down to where you're like so overwhelmed by the architecture and the ornate depictions of the gospel. But kind of this question that came up was like, what would that do to you as a member of the laity?
And I think that we both kind of decided it's very difficult as a layperson to just even be there.
Yeah.
And
Especially someone non-Catholic.
totally. And I think that if you're coming into something like that for the first time, especially as somebody who's not a Christian to begin with, it'd be extremely intimidating
Mhm.
to come into a church like that as your daily service, right? Not that that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and it absolutely does still point to God, but can you miss it?
Yeah.
Right?
No, and all of what we experienced in that church, it's like, nothing was bad necessarily.
No.
It was very, very grand, but that kind of comes back to the idea. It's not wrong, but it kind of has implications for
Yeah.
maybe uncatechized
Well, and there's a
laity.
couple things even in that Cathedral of Mary Our
Mhm.
Queen that I think explain that perfectly. For
Yeah.
instance, the hat.
So we
The
got
hat's
to
really
talk
funny.
about the hat. So something we haven't talked about yet was in this cathedral, actually right next to the altar, there was a hat that belonged to a cardinal.
Yeah.
And there's kind of an urban legend sort of around this hat. It was explained to us by Father Leo that this hat belonged to the cardinal, and they hung it up in this chapel. And the idea is that the cardinal is in purgatory currently,
Which he should be, because
he
he's not a
should be,
saint.
because he's not a saint, and so he's currently in purgatory, and he will not be freed from purgatory until the hat falls.
And it's just
or
like
rather,
attached by a tiny little
yeah,
string.
it's attached by a tiny little string, and rather, it's when the hat falls that signifies that he has been released
his
from
soul
purgatory.
has been sprung from purgatory.
Yeah.
And it's they make it out to be like, oh, that's just a funny tradition.
It's just
that
a
we
funny
like to
tradition,
do.
right?
But at the end of the day, like if it's legitimately still in the ceiling, it's definitely not just
Mhm.
a silly thing anymore. I mean, that could be misinterpreted for something much worse.
Certainly.
And that's also true of a lot of the Marian stuff that we saw. And
Yeah.
that was a big theme, was the amount of Marian doctrine that we were fed in every single church, down to the names of all of these
Yeah.
churches. And again, that could be super misinterpreted. I
Yeah.
don't think that Mary does lead us to Christ in a large regard, but if she is the primary figure of much of these places, is she leading us to Christ, or is she
Yeah.
standing on her own?
Quite literally, we at one of the shrines, the Shrine of Our Lady of Lourdes, there was a 150-foot tall statue, gold statue of Mary.
On a ginormous
pillar.
like pillar. It was a whole thing.
So, I mean, man, that's really tough to I know Father Leo every time we kind of came across a lot of Mary, he would say, "Yeah, I know. You guys are Protestants. You're probably thinking, what is going on with all this Mary stuff?" And, he proceeded to explain away a lot of the concerns most Protestants would have.
And he does have a degree in
And he has a
Mariology.
degree in Mariology. So he's able to explain it in a very technical way. To say, well, technically, Mary is always going to point us to Christ. She is only glorified because of Christ's power
Yeah.
working in her. And it's like, okay,
That's
all that
true.
totally fair.
Yeah.
But then there's also a 150-foot tall statue of Mary.
So the question that begs is, does that stand? The question that begs is that enough evidence on its own to lead to Jesus, right?
Mhm.
Are you always going to be pointed to Jesus by a big gold statue,
Right.
or do you need an interpreter, right?
Yeah.
And to the laity, what's the most plain interpretation of that? And to me, it seems difficult to come to the conclusion
Yeah.
that Mary is always leading us to Christ. And I think that one of the things we've been talking about on our own is if it's not abundantly apparent what the
Mhm.
no, I'm going to rephrase this.
If it's not explicitly.
If Catholicism properly done and properly revered and properly catechized is super beautiful.
Mm.
And Catholicism that is not properly catechized
Mhm.
can be really difficult.
Yeah.
And it can lead people astray in some regards, because if it's not abundantly obvious, then it might take you down a path that you aren't led down
Mhm.
by the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
You can be led astray.
Well, and I think that leads into what we also experienced with Relics,
Mm-hmm.
because this was our first time seeing Relics, interacting with them, being told about the legends, and also what I would say is like collecting relics in
Right.
your. So I brought my rosary
Ding,
with
ding,
me,
ding, ding, ding.
and I guess for the viewers that don't know, there's an idea that there's 3 classes of relics. First class relic is the body part of a saint who's in heaven. A second class relic is an object that belonged to that saint, something that they interacted with. And a third class relic is a sacramental, like a rosary,
Mhm.
that is touched to a first class or second class relic.
Yes.
So kind of the idea behind that is that you are showing dedication or asking for the intercession of a saint by touching your sacramental to their relic. I mean, first off, what's your initial thoughts of doing that as a practice?
To be completely honest, it was really strange. And a lot of the times, it's a very small piece.
Mhm.
But when we went to the shrine of St. Anne, it was a rather large bone. And that's
Mhm.
pretty cool. And I don't know what I had in my head going into it. I think I expected the priest to kind of like take it from you and to
Mhm.
like bring it into some little gold box where they like open it up and they like touch it very gently and
Do a
then they
little
like
prayer
hand you
over
back.
it.
Yeah, they do a little prayer for you and then they hand your rosary back to you and you're like, it's touched the saint.
Yeah.
It's made contact. And the reality is it's behind some glass. And you just dink it to the side of the glass and there's some
Yeah.
transmutation that happens there. And that's about the end of it.
Mhm.
And it feels superstitious. And
Yeah.
I understand that this is a legitimate Catholic belief that a lot of people believe in. And I'm not knocking on that belief
Yeah.
as anti-Christian. I don't think that goes against Christian belief. But it's very hard
But is
for
it
me to see
distracting?
that
Yeah.
as a way that leads us to Christ.
Well, and it felt so superstitious to me because I collected about 15 relics into my rosary.
13 in a day, no less.
13 in a day, and I could probably name you about 2 of the saints that are actually, I guess, collected
Mhm.
collected in my rosary, which feels contrary to the point. But
Yeah.
the actual practice that is taught, which is touch your sacramental to the relic, and it will gain a special place in prayer. The actual practice that's taught doesn't match what is maybe
Totally.
intended for it.
And the reality is, relics do have some degree of power, and that can be disputed over which relics have power
Sure.
and what ones are going to fall into that category. But we absolutely see stories of
Yeah.
people touching the garments of Jesus and having full healings. And even the
Yeah.
garments of Paul have been known to do
Yeah,
healings.
from
So-
scripture, it's like you can't ignore that.
But those
But-
are apostolic, and it begs the question.
Yeah.
Does that
100%.
transfer?
Well, and does it kind of eliminate the point if there's kind of this fervor around relics that you go on pilgrimages to see and venerate relics? I mean, we even weirdly enough, we met someone in an Irish bar
Yeah.
In Baltimore that showed us two of his relics. One of them, I believe, was a relic of Saint Rita.
I think so. I
I
can't
could be
remember.
remembering wrong, but it smells like apples and
Which
flowers,
that's pretty cool.
which that's pretty neat. He didn't know what body part it was, though. He barely even
It
knew
was a
the story.
speck.
Yeah, it
It
was a
was
speck.
realistically a pebble.
He barely even knew the story of the saint. He also pulled out another relic after that that was supposedly a relic of Saint Michael the Archangel.
I didn't even see that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and we looked it up after, and we're pretty sure that you can't have a relic
Because he's an
of an
angel?
of an archangel, but it's everyone. He pulled that out, and everyone still crowded around him and
Right.
tried and touched their sacramentals to it. And then you
Yeah.
kind of question, like, maybe you could pull it out of scripture to this idea of relics, but is the Catholic Church doing this properly? Is
And
the
you
Catholic Church distracting from the gospel because of this practice?
They are absolutely doing it better, though, I will say, because you think back to medieval times,
Sure.
it was a disaster. Every church had thousands of relics,
Yeah,
and they all claimed to have specific pieces, and they've really pared it back from that. And I think that the idea of a pilgrimage is even really cool because
Yeah.
you're still going to experience a part of the church that will reveal something new to you. It's a learning experience.
Sure.
And our pilgrimage from that perspective was phenomenal.
Yeah.
We learned so much about the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
We learned so much about relics and about, seminaries and stuff like that. And I think from that perspective, really awesome experience. But from the perspective of now my rosary is a little bit more holy and I'm going to
Mhm.
go do this whole pilgrimage to make my rosary better.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that's the reason you should go on a pilgrimage.
Or even, there's a part from our perspective where we're like, wow, this is really great for our own knowledge, our
Mhm.
experience. We kind of built our catalog of understanding Catholics. But going to the shrine of Our Lady of Lourdes, there was a sign there that talked about when you pilgrimage to this shrine and do these certain prayers,
Yeah.
you'll get 500 days of off purgatory
Yeah.
or
No, I think it was
500 days
500
of
days. Yeah.
indulgence. I truly don't understand the doctrine around indulgence, but like that that's obviously very strange for us as
Extremely.
Protestants, not having anything like that. And it from the outside, it's odd. It seems superstitious to me.
Definitely. And I think the final thing we wanted to touch on that we weren't so
Mhm.
sure about was adoration.
Yeah.
What did you think about adoration?
Yeah, there was several different times where we were put in. I say put in, but we were led into an adoration chapel. We're given 15 minutes to pray and to just spend time doing adoration. And previous to that, we had only gone to adoration once. We were not there super long. We
Maybe
really
half
just
an hour?
maybe half an hour. We just went to kind of like experience it for the first time, very blind. So um, this was our second time experiencing it. I think we did 3 different adorations.
Yes.
And the chapels were very beautiful that we were in. But adoration still has yet to feel anything but sitting in the presence of a communion host. And I still have, like, this is just my honest reaction to it. I posted a video about these concerns. I don't know that we should be taking communion out of its express context of, in my mind, the most intimate thing that you can do with the flesh of Christ is to commune in it,
To
not
partake.
to partake in
Yeah.
it. And I totally understand. Like, obviously, we discussed this with Catholics for 3 straight days about talking about our concerns with adoration. And I understand the apologetics of, well, you are spending time in the physical presence
Yeah.
of God, and this is what I experience when I go to adoration. Understand that. Honestly, respect it. One of our good friends on the trip, Elliot, he loves adoration. As a non-Catholic, he loves adoration. He feels the presence of God
A
when
lot of
he's
people
there.
feel that way.
A lot of people feel that way, but I don't. And that is odd. It's an odd practice if you don't feel that presence. It really feels
Do-
like you're kneeling before a communion host.
Do you feel like that's a preconception that you've brought to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that for the whole trip, I tried to really like not empty my mind, but be open to it. I'm not trying to like fight against Catholicism. I'm really trying to experience it because that's what we want to do with the channel. But adoration in particular feels like something that is I just don't know that I could partake in.
Right. I I think for me, I'm of a similar opinion. I don't know that it's necessarily the act of the communion wafer being taken out of its context that
Hmm.
makes the difference for me,
Sure.
but just the idea that God is more present when
Yeah.
there is a transubstantiated piece of bread in the midst of our presence. And I understand the idea behind it. That's not foreign to me, but I think that the reality of that is, what if it's not?
Hmm.
What if it is not transubstantiation? What if there's a misunderstanding and a miscommunication? And
Yeah.
this is a big point of contention because then you are worshiping bread.
Yeah.
And that is kind of a problem for me. And if there's a gamble and it's not expressly, you know, stated in scripture, are we supposed to do that?
Sure.
And is that edifying for some? Maybe, but is it required? Is
Yeah.
it something that you should do? I have a hard time saying that.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, it's very difficult to come to the realization, what if I'm wrong?
Hmm.
Right? And that's one of the things that's keeping me from the Catholic Church to a certain extent is the fullness of truth idea.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that I'll ever have the fullness of truth. I don't think that we can on earth like achieve that fullness. And to that end, I think it's very difficult to say this is where it's completely right.
Mm.
This is how I know because the vicar of Christ has said so. And it's difficult for me to come to that conclusion with
Yeah.
adoration, especially.
Well, that's definitely the Protestant in us talking. To give definitely some credit to, I guess, just the practice around communion, the Eucharist. I do really love that part of the Mass is kneeling
Hmm.
when um, when the communion is consecrated. Um, Now it's like that's kind of conflicting with our beliefs about adoration, where it's like I don't think that God becomes more present when the host is consecrated. I think he becomes more present when you partake.
Yeah,
But I posted a reel about this. I think we need to bring back reverence in Protestant
totally.
churches. I think we have forsaken that part of worship, and one of the big things that we experienced on this trip was reverence. And it was a reminder that this is part of our Christian faith, is being
Yeah.
reverent towards the presence of God.
And even just down to the way that they enter the pews, right?
Yeah.
Kneeling and making the sign of the cross before you.
Genuflecting.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that before. It was always a little bit like awkward for
Hmm.
me, but I tried it and I actually thought it was a cool
Yeah.
practice. And sure, maybe it is putting you at a distance and people know you're not Catholic for
Yeah.
not doing it. But at the end of the day, it's up to, your heart and what reverence you're trying
Yeah.
to put forward. And I think in the Protestant church, we need more of that. And there are some Protestant churches that do it better than others, but it's a matter of bringing reverence back to
Mm.
the modern church.
Yeah. And that'll be a long discussion for the future for sure,
Exactly.
how we do that. But I think ultimately that was the biggest takeaway.
Yeah. And other than that, I mean, there was a lot of really positive aspects of the trip too. The beautiful buildings, the getting to partake in community, the food was amazing, and I think that there was just a lot that was super positive about the trip. I know we reflected on a lot of our critical thoughts, but more than just the critical thoughts, I think there
Hmm.
was a lot that we really loved and a
Yeah.
lot that we gained from that, especially just experientially. Getting to be in the presence of a lot of these practices
Yeah.
changes your perspective on them.
Yeah.
It's easy to make an articulation for why you should go to adoration, but once you're actually in the adoration chapel, how do you feel?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and on that note, huge thank you to Father Leo and Plating Grace. This trip really was beneficial for us, I think, and we had a lot of takeaways. So, yeah, I think we'll leave it there. I think this was ultimately a great experience, and we look forward to doing more explorations of Christian tradition like this.
Absolutely.